Coming up, are unlocked cell phones the future? Is Mobile World Congress still even relevant? File sharing and BitTorrent, are they on the ropes? Yahoo says to its workers, no more working from home, you guys. And what does Battletoads have to do with Groupon? All that and a lot more on this episode of Downloaded. Hey, welcome to Downloaded. This is the show where we gather the most opinionated voices in the tech field today and focus that energy on the stories that are impacting the tech world. I am your host, Jim Louderback. I am super excited to have two actually returning guests this time. Anthony Ha from TechCrunch. Anthony, thank you for coming.
Thanks for
and
having
Hermione
me.
Wei from The Next Web. It's also great to have you back. Hermione was actually here when we didn't even have a couch. So this is his first time sitting on the couch. And
you had the bar stools?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had bar stools. It's better with a couch, especially when we're drinking bourbon, which is what we're drinking today. Let's get to the first story. It's all about, actually, this is a TechCrunch story, so it's great, Anthony, that you're here. Julius Janikowski was over at your offices yesterday talking about a bunch of stuff. One of the things was this uproar on unlocking cell phones. Now, up till about a month or two ago, you could unlock your cell phone and it would be totally fine, even though it technically violated the DMCA. Not true anymore. Now you have to, now if you try to unlock your cell phone, you are at risk. And Julius Janikowski yesterday runs FCC and said he's going to look into it and see if he has any authority to do anything. And if he does, he's going to try and see maybe he could change this. Anthony, should we be allowed to unlock our phones even if they're under contract?
I mean, I think so. I don't necessarily have a lot of legal justification for it, but as a consumer, it just seems like something that should be allowed. That it's our phones. We should have that freedom to that. There's certain risks that come with that, but it shouldn't. It doesn't seem like it should be illegal. It also seems like something strange where it was legal and suddenly they felt there was some pressing need to lock it down, which just seems kind of strange.
Well, it's a little weird, right? Because it's really only a GSM thing, isn't it? I mean, you can't take a Verizon phone and run it on Sprint, even though they're both CDMA.
As far as I know, I mean, I'm not someone who spends a lot of time like messing with my phone, but as far as I know, I think, yeah.
Right, the real thing is being able to take your GSM, your Apple phone, and moving it somewhere else or others. Now, what I don't get is, this is pretty much a US problem, right? In Europe, it's very different. People don't buy subsidized phones, and they're mostly unlocked, isn't that right?
Yeah, in Europe you can pretty much do whatever you want, especially if you're, paying somebody for it. I know heaps of guys that'll unlock your phone for $50,
right,
or £50.
Well, now that's illegal in the US. A lot of things are illegal.
You gotta go to Europe then. You gotta go see. Yeah.
So I mean, look, the option, the thing I did was I went out and bought the Nexus 4, which is unlocked to begin with. So this is, even though I'm using it on T-Mobile, I can put it on AT&T, or I go to Europe and use it just as easily without worrying about locking it. I think this whole unlock thing really affects people who are international travelers because it's so expensive to use your phone and roam internationally.
Yeah.
It's just a pain in the butt.
Yeah, well, last time I was in Europe, I think I racked up like $2,000, and AT&T were like, sorry, you left your roaming on, there's nothing you can do about it.
Did you have to pay it?
Yeah, I think I swindled them out of like $500.
No, they swindled you out of $1,500.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the right way to look at it, yeah.
So DMCA bans the circumvention of copy protection. Really, it's really interesting. I just don't get it.
Well, I think it's also one of those things when people talk about the DMCA also about how it's this weird sort of collision of both law and code and hardware sort of, that something is illegal, then they also then build all this sort of stuff to try to block this illegal stuff, and then it becomes illegal to mess with anything that's blocking all this illegal stuff, and it just becomes incredibly complicated, and there's sort of all this collateral damage usually.
Yeah, and it's interesting on this story. I mean, it happened over at TechCrunch's headquarters
Even though
in
I
San
wasn't
Francisco.
invited to the event, which
so
Greg,
funny.
you and I have to talk about this.
I pulled this story because you were coming over. They wouldn't even let you go.
I know. I'm seeing him in a little bit. He's gonna hear it.
So there are apparently 100,000 signatures on the We the People petition that went into the Obama administration saying, please let us unlock our phones. I don't even know if Janikowski, I don't think he knows if he has any jurisdiction over this thing.
Which is the part of the story I love the most.
Right, exactly. He may not have an ability to do it, but if he does, I mean, is he pandering to us? Is pandering to us Silicon Valley geeks here?
Yeah. I feel like that's a common thing when you see, people from DC coming to Silicon Valley. It's very much kind of like, they're smart people. They're not going to say something that isn't relevant, that they can't do, but they're going to kind of waffle, and they're also going to sort of tailor their message. And
it's like patting us on the head, you little Silicon Valley
guys. It's like,
guys.
oh yeah, sure, we love innovation.
On.
We totally, we think this is a bad thing. I'll see what I can do. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised in that situation. It was definitely, kind of he was asked, and I haven't, I've only read the stuff that you have, but my sense is that, he was asked the question, and he said, yeah, that sounds terrible.
Which,
I mean, it is kind of curious that you would think he would kind of know about it.
Well,
As the chairman of the FCC, you'd think he would know more about it.
I'm sure he knows a little bit about it. I'm sure he's heard a fair bit about it.
Yeah.
He is chairman of the FCC after all.
Right.
Let's move on to our next story that's kind of related because it's about mobile. It's the only way it's related. But Mobile World Congress has been a big show going on in Barcelona. This was used to be GSM World. It's where all the cell phone guys come together and show off all their cool new products, sort of. Shelley Palmer, a guy I have a lot of respect for, is over there and wrote about it and said there wasn't anything good there. This is more of a see and a scene, be seen event rather than showing off all your new tech hardware. Pretty interesting. Hermione, are you surprised? I mean, it used to be a really cool show where we'd see all this cool new. She's falling asleep already.
Sorry, you said what
Mobile World
Congress. Right, that's right. Well, in fact, I haven't ever been to Mobile World Congress because I'd say in the last sort of 3 to 4 years it hasn't really been relevant.
How can you say it's not relevant?
Because everyone uses iPhones and Apple doesn't go there. So
no, everyone doesn't use iPhones. You've been in Silicon Valley for too long. You got to go to Chicago or Iowa.
I don't know.
I'm sending you to Iowa so you can see what phones people use there.
Yeah, I mean,
sorry if you live in Iowa. I'm not making fun of you.
There's so many tech
the real people in Iowa.
But look at CES. It's the
right.
same, right?
Same
it's
thing.
full of 10,000 gadgets that do one thing. Hardware, dumb hardware that does nothing. You know, you want to have 10,000 apps on one thing, not 10,000 apps doing nothing.
Okay, well, we have 2 things. So I've got an Android phone here. What are you using?
I have an iPhone, but I left it in my backpack because I didn't want to interrupt the filming.
No, but we like props here.
I didn't realize that, I should take calls on camera.
Well, so look, 33% of the people sitting right here do not use an iPhone, so that's a market.
Well, I don't know.
Maybe I'm just
bored. You can find all the news online anyway. What's the point of traveling all the way to Spain and putting up with their tapas?
Yeah, no, I know. Well, what's interesting
is... That does sound terrible, you're right.
Wait a minute, I like tapas. I would go to Spain to put up with their tapas. Well, but I agree with you, it's a long way to go for a conference that doesn't have anything cool in it.
Right.
I mean, it kind of reminds me, you brought up CES, it reminds me of Comdex back when, 20 years ago, they'd be showing off all these PCs and they'd all be the same. It's like one would be black and one would be beige, one would be cow-colored, and they really wouldn't be any different. Have we gotten to the point where cell phones are so interchangeable that we really don't care about the hardware anymore, Anthony?
I think we're getting, pretty close. That and certainly, you talk about the iPhone, like each release, and I'm always prepared for Apple to prove me wrong and the next release to be amazing and totally this huge leap forward. But it is at this point, even with Apple, where each iPhone seems kind of like a much more incremental improvement than before. What are Google Glasses going to change at all? Ooh, suddenly we're wearing glasses? I mean, Google Glass, I think it's fundamentally going to change our relationship with computers. I mean, think about it. You've always had a physical relationship. You've always had to be at a desk for a desktop, a lap for a laptop. With Google Glass, you can be doing whatever you like, sending emails, answering your Twitter. And nobody knows. Yeah, exactly. Right. You're sitting in a meeting and you're doing your email and nobody knows. No, I think it's going to, I mean, part of the reason why a large majority of the West is obese is because we have to sit down all day. And so now we can be active and go along our daily business. I think it's going to fundamentally... Although we can be active, I'll be curious to see, whether we actually will be, or if it's, we'll still be used in a stationary setting a lot. Here's what I think is going to be interesting with Google Glass. You see the parody of the people like working on their phone and they crosswalk and they get hit by a truck. I mean, now people will be looking, but they won't be seeing, and they'll get hit by the truck. Yeah. No. My goal, actually, the experiment that I want to run when I finally get my hands on one is, what is 24-hour immersion in porn while you're going about your day? Like, what does that actually do to your brain? So, stay tuned to TechCrunch. At some point, you'll find out. That's going to be a really interesting story. I'm looking forward to seeing you do that story, and then I'm looking forward to the after effects of that story. I am not looking forward to the after effects of that story. I don't want to know. Well, it's interesting. We are seeing some different ways for cell phone displays to be used. There's Google Glass, but also the Pebble, the little Pebble watch that was started to go out this week as well. Either of you guys got your hands on a Pebble at all? Some of the other TechCrunch writers did, and I think, it's, kind of similar to Google Glass. It's, I think, a lot of with these V1s, it's a lot more about the potential than the execution, but I think the idea was there is something there that you can imagine people building on. Yeah, look, I think we're going to get displays that go on our eyes. I think we'll have displays that are inked onto our skin. But yeah, I don't think either of these products are necessarily the ones that are going to make it. Right. So let's move on to something else that is probably not going to make it for a lot of people. This is the 6 Strikes Anti-Piracy scheme. Starting apparently Monday, you get a couple strikes for using torrent and downloading illegal content. And if the ISPs in the US find you, after 5 or 6 warnings, they will do various things to shut you down.
This is the one I love the best, actually. AT&T, they'll send you like 4 warnings, and then they're going to block you until you go to copyright school. Ooh. So it's kind of like driving school when you get a ticket in California. Hermione, he's going to do the story about 24 hours of porn. Will you do the story on copyright school for us?
Come on, it's like high school. It's like getting a detention. One more problem and you're out. It's absolutely ridiculous. And like the infrastructure needed to keep tabs on like 6 warnings for millions of people.
Is it millions of people, do you think?
Yeah, of course it is.
Well, to keep tabs on, not to not to enforce. Like, because I mean, when you talk about just if you're moderating that many people, it's going to be millions is probably an underestimate.
Well, and how are they going to find out? Is it basically if the MPAA or the RIA complain, or is it just you're using BitTorrent and that's bad?
I think because it seemed like the stories I was reading, it was really focused on BitTorrent specifically, which just seems crazy.
Look, I have, full honesty, a BitTorrent server, well, BitTorrent running at my home right now, serving up live concerts of the Grateful Dead that you're allowed to serve. Are they going to come after me? I mean, I'm doing it. It's fine, right?
Right.
Did you just publicize that?
Legal.
Yeah, look, it's legal. I've taped them myself. I'm allowed to share them non-commercially.
Are you a Deadhead?
Yeah.
Okay.
Other bands too. Assembly of Dust, friend of mine's band. We talked about them last week. Coming to town next week. Forget the music that I like. There are legal things you can do with BitTorrent. I hope they're not just going after BitTorrent.
As BitTorrent would, if they were here, would say very loudly.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think anybody that can use BitTorrent can get a, IP blocker or, hack away around the system.
But that's the thing. Right. There's so many different ways that you can use. Like you can use BT Guard. I actually use BT Guard because I don't want to get. Right. I don't want them coming after me, even though I'm legitimately doing this.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so if that's the case, they're not going after the hardcore people like me. They're going after what they claim is the casual people.
Which is, I think, that is the most interesting thing about this story, is this idea that actually the problem, or one of the problems, is the casual person who probably breaks the law occasionally, but is not someone who would consider themselves like a serious pirate. And I mean, to me, that just seems like such a disaster in terms of like PR. Like once you start, and I mean, again, this is probably at least from the way most of the ISPs are implementing it, less of a disaster than like some of the other stories we've heard in the past. But it just seems like once you start seeing casual people affected this way, like there's just gonna be such a backlash.
Yeah, and what I think is gonna happen is you're gonna see a lot of homes around the U.S. where the parents don't know what's going on,
right?
And the kids are basically copying things or doing whatever, and all of a sudden. And especially if you're a Comcast user, a little message will pop up on your browser saying, you can't do anything on the internet anymore until you call us. And that's going to make for some interesting conversations at home, right, Hermione?
The kids are gonna do it anyway. They'll find a way, right? They always do. I mean, with kids, if you tell them not to do something, they're gonna do it more and more. So I think this is the wrong way to go about it.
Well, what's the right way to go about it?
Well, I'm into like discipline. They should make some big stories out of a few arrests of maybe like heavy users, but they shouldn't try and go after a slap on the wrist for the masses.
So yeah, go after like a 10-year-old who's downloaded a bunch of stuff, put her in jail.
Right, downloaded the amount of porn that Anthony has.
Didn't they try that? It didn't work, I don't think. I think they just got raked over the coals.
I think it's more a question of obviously, like, there's going to be a certain amount of piracy, and the question is, what are what are the costs, and what are the
That's a really good point. I mean, look, it's a tough problem, and copyrights are important because people spend money to create content, and they should be able to get money from people who enjoy it if that is what they wish. But I'm not sure this is the right way to do it either.
I don't know.
The other interesting angle of this story was that it will make people who want to share their internet less likely to do so as well.
Right.
So you get your internet and you want to share it with your neighbors. There's an open internet movement. This is going to really put a kibosh on that.
Yeah.
And what happens if we all go off to Starbucks and log into Starbucks or McDonald's and start sharing?
I'm pretty confident that the government, it would take a lot for the government to seriously start going after Starbucks.
They're going to shut down McDonald's.
Right. Of course, all of these like Wi-Fi, the public Wi-Fi's are like slow enough that also you're probably going to have to do a lot of BitTorrenting on them.
Well, you can share an audio file. Those are pretty small.
Right. That's true.
It's not like you'll be downloading a movie.
Right.
Right. But you can download a magazine pretty easily.
Right. That's true.
All right. Let's move on to our next story. For everybody who works in an office, this was a pretty interesting, somewhat chilling for some people. Yahoo, Marissa Mayer over there, new CEO, really trying to change the culture, has decided that nobody can work at home anymore, even if it was part of their employment contract and their deal. Y'all got to go into the office if you work at Yahoo, and you got to have a pretty good reason, maybe a note from your teacher if you need to leave work early. Hermione, why'd they do this? Do you agree with it?
Well, I think the problem was there were a lot of mums who could no longer be at home with their kids, and they found out that Marissa has actually built a creche. You know, being the CEO, she built a creche for her kids right next to the office.
Oh, interesting.
So that was the reason why so many people were angry, because it was like one rule for her,
right.
you know, Miss CEO, and another rule for the masses. But you know,
but is she paying for that nursery or creche herself? Or is the company paying for it?
Probably the company. I mean, I don't know the details. But, you know, the bottom line is we're sitting here talking about Yahoo again. I mean, when was the last time we sat around talking about Yahoo? Probably like 10 years ago, right?
Yeah, except the fact that they were crashing and burning. In this case, we're just saying, you know what? Show up to work. Because work's important.
Yeah, but we live in a time where, you know, you can work from anywhere thanks to the cloud. You don't need to be in a physical location.
But there's value, I think, in being a physical location, right, Anthony? I mean, what's the deal with TechCrunch? You guys all have to work in the same place?
So we don't. And I mean, we have, you know, like writers all over the country. Right. But there are certain TechCrunch writers who are, I mean, in general,
you don't have to name any names.
If you're near an office, you're encouraged to come into the office once in a while. And I've definitely found, you know, personally that if I'm in the office all the time, it can be hard, but if I'm not in there at all, I start to feel kind of, in my last job, I worked at Adweek, I was the one person out in San Francisco, and that was, not being in the office was really problematic. And I do think that, you know, from what I've heard about what Yahoo was like, it was that this was a real problem, that there were people staying home and they just weren't doing anything. But, you know, there's definitely, at the same time, I think I would argue that, you know, that being like, well, everyone just has to be in the office all the time is not the right solution.
It's a little draconian.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, look, I do think there are certain types of businesses that are better off where people are all together, like media, for example. You know, whether it's TechCrunch or our own thing here.
Yeah, what's the Revision 3 policy?
We're pretty mellow, but people should work. I mean, this is where our edit bays are. You get a lot more done when you collaborate with people here. But we're open about it. Somebody needs to work at home because the cable guy is coming, or it's just for other reasons. I mean, it's definitely doable, but really it's you should be here because collaboration with media, especially stuff that's changing so quickly, I think it's really important.
But you can collaborate. You just do it over, you know, what do you use, Livefire?
We use Convo, yeah.
Convo, yeah.
Yeah, but it's very different to just get up and walk around and see somebody and just sort of start chatting with them.
Right.
I kind of get where Marissa's going, and I think your point is right. In the end, it's kind of like where you have kids, right? And so with kids, it's like, you know, you get more responsibility, you earn your responsibility. You earn your ability to go out till 10 o'clock at night. Right. You earn your ability to borrow the family car. And it can be taken away. I think Yahoo's employees, they haven't earned that ability yet. Right.
I do think that, so one of the things I did heard sort of tying in with that was this idea that some people are going to quit because of this, and that, you know, that actually the executives are fine with this because those are probably, you know, the fat that could be cut anyway. But you kind of wonder, well, it's like, well, if there are people who are problems and they weren't doing work, they should be fired. Or, you know, disciplined in some way. If there are people who were staying home and they were being productive, it seems really silly to kind of, you know, catch them up in this kind of, you know,
yeah, but you know, it's a large company, right? You're talking about tens and tens of thousands of people. I don't know how many employees they have.
I think it breaks 10, but it's not a huge amount over.
But it's still it's a lot of people, and so it's hard to have rules for some that don't apply to others. And look, Marissa, I have to applaud her. She is trying to turn around a company that has been I mean, it's been in terrible shape for the last 6, 7, 8 years. And if this is what it takes, good for her.
I'm interested to know, why do you find the office distracting?
I mean, just having a lot of people around can certainly be, you know, when people like want to talk, they're like, hey, let's talk about, you know, this thing that happened last time. Like, no, like, you know, certainly, I'm in the middle of something. It's not necessarily on deadline, but it'd be nice if I could, like, you know, work for an hour, write something for an hour at a stretch, and not, you know, get pulled into random conversations.
Now, the other thing I will say, though, have either of you been to the Sunnyvale offices at Yahoo?
I have.
They're dismal.
They're not great.
No, I mean, they're up basically on a landfill. I mean, it's like, here's what's going to happen. I mean, it's basically built on Pampers. When there's an earthquake, it's going to liquefy. I wouldn't want to work in those offices.
Oh, gosh.
I agree. I've been to the San Francisco offices, which are actually a lot better.
Are they better? Yeah.
They're better, although they have this like weird security where you can't control the elevators from inside the elevator.
Oh, that's so annoying.
They're not the only ones that have that.
Yeah, they're not.
You can't blame that on Marissa Meyer.
But I'm just saying, if we're talking, I mean, you also can't blame the condition of the Sunnyvale offices on Marissa Meyer either.
That's true.
But well, maybe she needs to do a restoration.
Yeah.
Well, if you're going to make people work in an office, at least have an office in a place where people want to work.
Right. Absolutely.
Right? Although you can't really change that quickly. I do think, though, you know, to me, it says to Yahoo workers, which may be true, but it says we can't trust you.
Yeah.
And I think that's a little bit of an issue.
Yeah.
Right.
let's move on to our next story. It's a Time Warner story. Time Warner says, I don't buy it, but Time Warner says that nobody wants gigabit internet. Anthony, do you want gigabit internet?
Well, see, this is the thing, is I don't think most people actually care what the speed is. Like, in terms of, like, if you gave me a number, I wouldn't be able to say, oh, I do or don't want that. It's like, when I'm streaming Netflix, is it, like, high quality and is it fast? Right. And,
it's what do people want, exactly.
Right.
And gigabit
and that number is only going to become more and more over time. That, like, we're going to want more high quality video. We're going to want, people to have, like, so many devices connected to the internet. So, I mean, whether or not I would say I want it, like, my actions will show that I want it. Maybe not now, but certainly, a year from now.
Well, I live with 5 guys, and I can tell you right now, there's a lot of video streaming in my house. So, I think gigabit is definitely needed, and as you said, the numbers are only going to go up.
Well, and it's not going to be any different at a family where you've got, a mom and dad, a couple kids. They're all going to be streaming their own thing, right? So you've got 4 different, really HD high quality streams coming into the house. You're not going to be able to support that on what passes for regular internet these days, from Time Warner mostly.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree.
In Hong Kong, they've got gigabit, even 10 gigabits in Hong Kong. People certainly seem to want that.
I think people will, it's it's interesting because the way that Time Warner is framing is that we offer certain things that are already like 1 and in some cases 10. People just don't, go for it. But I think I'm already skeptical about that claim. But I think that if that's true now, that's just not going to be true in the future.
Yeah, look, this comment that the head of Time Warner made was in response to a question about Google Fiber, and because they're out in Kansas City and they've been rolling it out. Any update? You guys know what's going on out there? How that's doing? People buying it? I don't. It's only been for a couple months. What?
I don't know too many people in Kansas.
You don't know anyone in Kansas? You've got readers in Kansas?
I know, we do.
It's not where they use Android phones.
Don't be hating on Kansas, guys.
Right.
Come on.
We are this segment will just basically prove that Hermione and I are like the most worst flyover assholes in the world.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to do the next version of Downloaded in Kansas, and you guys are coming because I want to expose you to the wonders of the flyover. So the other question I have about putting fiber in is it's difficult, right? In Hong Kong, it's easy because all the buildings are packed together and you don't have to run that much fiber. In the U.S., it's pretty spread out, especially when you get, away from the big cities. Do you think this is a problem for Time Warner, who says, look, we're not going to do gigabit because, frankly, we don't want to invest in it?
It's expensive. I mean, I know the Rwandan government just invested $90 million into laying fiber optic cable throughout the country. $90 million, that's a lot. That's a lot of money. So
it's a lot in Rwanda,
in Rwanda, well, anywhere, but particularly there. But I think they're getting lazy, and I think they're just saying we can't be bothered, and you could just have to deal with what we've got already.
Well, I would also imagine that, again, that comment was made in the context of Google Fiber, and it's a way of saying, it's not something that people are demanding right now. I mean, I assume that just because he said that doesn't mean Time Warner's going to be like, oh, okay, well, we're just going to do slow pipes.
Yeah, right.
They're going to continue doing it, but he's just trying to say that that's not. That Google Fiber isn't necessarily going to, destroy us in the next few years.
Well, and I wonder, and I'm not an electrical engineer, and I keep on hearing claims of this.
We are, though. We know all of
you
that.
guys are electrical engineers.
Yeah.
So that's why I had you on the show.
Yeah.
There are capabilities of squeezing more and more out of the cable that's going to people's houses. So, perhaps we'll get close to that just with the cable plant without having to run fiber. I don't know. But there are engineers working on that. Let's talk about Groupon. Andrew Mason, the CEO, founder of Groupon, out. It's been a disappointing couple of months, or maybe more than a couple of months since they went public almost 2 years ago. What do you think, Hermione? Are you surprised about this?
Given Groupon's numbers, no, because they've been doing this ever since they IPO'd. But the most surprising thing is the way that he left. He wrote this really...
loved his letter.
Yeah, really unusual.
Get a chance to read it. We'll put a link to it in our comments. It's great.
But, he started off by saying, I want to spend more time with my family. Not. I've been sacked from Groupon, It's just it was kind of like... He was just taking the mickey out of himself.
Well, he's a wacko. Okay, I saw him speak at All Things D 2 years ago, and but a wacko in a nice way. I mean, he was a wacko, but he's also, I think he's very upfront. He knew what the problems of the company were. He wasn't able to solve them, and I think that his own personality clashed with the Silicon Valley folks that he brought in.
Can you? What was he like? I'm interested.
He was like off the cuff statements. He showed up in.
This was when he did the stare, right?
Right,
Kara?
the stare, right.
Yeah.
He just kind of stared at Kara. Well, it was before they went public, and she was looking for details on them going public, and it was so uncomfortable, it was hilarious.
He was just staring at Kara?
Well, she would ask, when are you guys going public? And he would just do.
Yeah.
For like a minute.
For a long
solid.
time.
All right.
So I got to applaud him because I think it's tough being a CEO when you're, especially companies going public, can't say anything. You've got a lot of people on your board. But in the end, I think he was probably just a little bit too wacko. And there are CEOs that are wacko that have done a good job. You look at Zappos, for instance, right? I mean, he's a total wacko, but he's done a great job in building the company. They've been profitable. You can only take wacko so far.
I think you have to be a little bit crazy to be CEO of a big company. I mean, look at you, right?
I'm totally crazy.
I do think the other thing about Andrew was that I never spoke to him one-on-one, but just like listening to earnings calls, seeing him at events, was that that he was, you look at someone like Jobs, I think, and obviously he's sort of such a stereotypical example, but he's somebody who was clearly like a visionary, kind of crazy, but he was able to sort of integrate that into like kind of one package. Whereas like with Andrew, you sort of get like the crazy side when he was on Twitter, when he was sort of speaking off the cuff, and then there were other times when he was CEO and he was just so buttoned down and boring and uninspiring, and he would sort of like, it was almost sort of schizophrenic, trying to be
what he's not, right?
Right, exactly.
Right? He's just he's tried to shed his skin and he didn't. I thought the best part of his the thing that he said was the Battletoads reference. You guys catch that? I have a screenshot of Battletoads in case you were wondering about Battletoads up on my computer. I'm not sure if we can take it, but there's a little bit more on Battletoads. It's a great game, old 80s Super NES game. But Battletoads is just hilarious.
And it was one of the hardest games of its time, right?
Yeah, and the other thing is they actually reinvented it as a Wii game. So yeah, you can play Wii on it. You can play the Wii version, which wasn't
and I think actually
fun.
It was sort of a great reference, but also in sort of to support a serious point, which is that obviously it like sucks to get fired like this, but that what he's already done with Groupon, especially pre-IPO, I think is something worthy of admiration, even if we might have reservations about what Groupon is, and certainly investors have reservations about what Groupon has done since the IPO.
I agree. He did a great job, and a great job where he hired a lot of people. Like rather than applying systems to the problem, they hired 8,000 people 2 years ago to go out in every community and go door to door to businesses. Very much a Yellow Pages business almost.
Right.
But so the last question I have on this story for both of you guys, and Hermione, we'll start with you, is there really a business around these local deals that's big enough to support the sorts of things we're seeing with Living Social and Groupon and all the others?
I mean, didn't Living Social just raise another massive round of like couple hundred million?
Yeah, they did.
If they're needing to raise more money, I think that's a sign that there's not the revenue there already. So for me, that's a big warning sign. But I mean, I think that it's a trend, and I can't foresee the future. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, even if you look at what Groupon has been doing, they've been desperately trying, and what I think the last 6 months for Andrew Mason has probably been like is desperately trying to find figure out what's the next thing after group deals, sort of in mobile and things like that. And that's why like they always are like, we're not a group deals company, we're we're the future of commerce or something that sounded kind of vague, and they couldn't really back it up. But I think that certainly it feels like group deals on their own feels like much more of like part of a larger company
like Amazon or something.
Right.
I mean, it's like Woot all over again almost.
Right. Or like you look back, like that at this point there's almost kind of a thing of like, oh, maybe like everyone was sort of laughing about the Google Groupon acquisition offer, and now it's then like, well, maybe they should have taken the acquisition offer.
By the way, I don't know if you guys saw the cover of the Wii Battletoads, but I will always think of Andrew Mason as this guy here. It's up there on the screen. It's very funny. That's Andrew Mason to me forever. All right, we got one more story I want to talk about. Really interesting in Kotaku. This crazy hacker in Australia who claimed to have like chapter and verse on the PS4, chapter and verse on the new Xbox, all sorts of game information. And Anthony, what do you make of this story? It's a wacky sort of spy versus spy. I don't know. It's just weird.
Yeah, it was interesting because I mean, definitely, I feel like sort of hackers in general, which is an incredibly broad term, but I think to me are sort of very interesting in general because there's sort of this idea of who they are, I think, in sort of popular culture, and in sort of real life they tend to be much more boring and regular people who happen to just have this side gig. And I think it seems like that's kind of true in this case where he certainly had some like pretty remarkable, like hacks.
Well, he found some interesting information that turned out to be legit.
Right, but at the same time, it's just this guy sort of living in a suburb of Perth, a suburb of Perth, not Perth, and just sort of thought it was like interesting.
Well, it does point to the fact that you can pretty much get into anything from anywhere, so you don't actually have to be in Silicon Valley to be able to get the secrets of the next Xbox.
Right.
What'd you think, Hermione?
Well, I think it was a bit unfair because he didn't mean any harm. I think for a lot of hackers, they're just interested in information. They're not wanting to bring down an organization. They're not wanting to be the next WikiLeaks. He was just interested in what Microsoft was doing, and the police came over, raided his house, took away all of his money and his credit cards. The word on the street is now he's living, back at home with his family because he hasn't got anything to his name. And I think
I don't know. I mean, if somebody came into your house and rifled through your underwear drawer, you'd be pretty upset also. So I do get the point that he was just kind of playing around. But in the end, it's really important information that he ended up had his hands on and went public with.
Yeah, but at least he'd know what color underwear I'm wearing,
I think this is
And that's worth a lot of money.
Exactly.
The common defense for a lot of this stuff, right, is that in a lot of cases it's, well, if I could do it, anyone else could do it. So why is it that I'm the one that's being punished for, and again, where I'm finding this information and actually ostensibly making it public so that you can fix these problems, or maybe for pranking, but not for I'm not taking a bunch of credit card numbers or what have you, or social security numbers and really trying to do damage with them. Why am I the one who's kind of getting singled out?
Well, yeah, but he did claim to be working on his own, right? But I don't know where he came up with $15,000 to buy dev kits. Do you think he was really the point of a spear and there was a bigger organization behind him?
No, I think he's just, some geeky guy sitting at home, bored. I mean, what else is there to do in Western Perth, in a suburb of Perth?
Yeah.
So I think he's just, unfortunate, and I think probably Microsoft wanted to make a example of him, and I don't think there's any.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that one of the guys who runs security for Microsoft came over and actually they went to lunch, had a drink. I got these tweets up here. He tweeted out, I was invited to lunch by Microsoft tomorrow, YOLO. And then, yep, you only live once. And then his next tweet, bye-bye, Mr. Microsoft man. I have a feeling I'll be seeing more of you. I kind of buy your point because it's almost like he's just looking for attention. He's just lonely.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that how so many startups start? It's because people want attention and want to get laid, paid, and made. Isn't that the three the three reasons of doing a startup? Or
I had not heard that particular formulation before, but I'm going to steal that.
Well, let's see this guy that probably didn't get laid.
Yeah.
And probably didn't get paid.
Exactly.
And nothing's been made because now he's got nothing.
Well, yeah, but at least he's got, he's somebody now.
He has some notoriety, for sure.
I mean, I think it's pretty
cool. How many
cool.
followers he has on Twitter? SuperDaE. Talk amongst yourself for a minute while I find out.
I think it's pretty cool that some guy, would be able to hack. It's powerful. I actually had a huge crush on Julian Assange on WikiLeaks.
Did you?
Yeah. Oh my God, because he's had so much power and it's so sexy.
Wow,
right.
really?
Well, he also just has this very
yeah.
kind of intense face that you just, I feel like, there's a certain.
Yeah. I mean, power is sexy.
He's intimidating.
Yeah. 28,000 followers. Pretty good.
That's
more followers than I have.
Exactly.
More followers than I have.
Exactly.
How many followers do you have?
Not more than Hermione,
about
though.
the same.
Go on.
Yeah.
All right, so on that, we're going to end with Dan at SuperDaE. Hope it works out for him. I mean, look, it is sad that anybody, if he was acting on his own and wasn't part of a broader effort, it's sad when you spend that much effort and your basically your life is ruined for a while. But we'll see what happens. So that's it for this episode of Downloaded. Thanks for joining us. I want to thank Anthony Ha from TechCrunch, Hermione Way from The Next Web, and I want to thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions, suggestions, comments, want to talk about some of these stories, put them in the YouTube comments. We'll talk about them as well with you. And until then, you've been watching Downloaded. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Level 1.